Hello guys, and welcome to the latest hangout of the International Forced Rape Timeline. The subject of this hangout is God helps those who help themselves. No, I haven't got religion, it's a figure of speech. I begin with something related. A while ago, so if you hear that beeping, I can't do anything about that. It's my insane alarm. I've got a smoke alarm and a heat alarm, whatever, and I can't do anything about them. And, as you may have noticed, if you're in the UK, the weather's been like a desert. It's been like a desert today, anyway. I should say yesterday because it's gone midnight, but I know that today will be the same. Earlier this year, a documentary was put out by Netflix called Victim/Suspect, and it's about women who've been they've been accused of lying. They've made allegations of being raped or otherwise sexually assaulted. They've retracted, and then they've been charged with false reporting. I haven't watched this documentary. I have no intention of watching it, but one of the contributors is a woman named Lisa Avalos. You can tell from her haircut she doesn't like men much. She is, believe it or not, a full professor of law. She's been on this side of the pond a couple of times, and she involved herself in the Eleanor de Freitas case. She's written about that. That is part of the subject. Alexander Economou, who helped himself, as it were. Now, I must give some background here. Firstly, there was another Lisa Avalos, at least one other Lisa Avalos on YouTube. This one calls herself Lisa Avalos Law Prof. She opened this channel on July the 6th, 2023. It contains 14 videos, or really one video in 14 parts. She has 3 subscribers, only 3, and it's only had 142 views, which is rather uncharacteristic because in my experience, liars and idiots like Avalos get a lot of publicity, while the truth is very well. Let me put it this way: I'm so overwhelmingly shadow banned that I still don't have any followers on Twitter since I rejoined, and the views I've been getting on this account, on my YouTube Forced Rape Timeline account, I used to get on my main account. I used to get hundreds of views. Typically hundreds, or maybe a few thousand for a video. In the past 2 or 3 years, it's ludicrous. Avalos has a very big audience, not on YouTube but elsewhere, and she's told, well, I mean, I think the really shocking thing, I think she believes all this garbage, because I can't see anyone with a law degree. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Most of the video, whatever you want to call it, is about the case of Gail Sherwood. Sherwood is a woman who, she lived in Gloucestershire. I presume she still does, but she's dead. She claimed to, I mean, you'll find one, I'll put a link below, on the Forced Rape Timeline. She claimed to have been raped by the police set up a camera outside the house because of the claim she was making, and eventually she was charged with there's trains now. Eventually she was charged with false reporting, perverting the course of justice, or whatever. Avalos doesn't mention in her video that she actually caused an innocent man to be arrested. I've done an article for the UN. I'll link that below as well. But she's just a total whack job. Avalos, total whack job. And Sherwood is you know, I mean, stay away from women like that. But she also involved herself with the Alexander Economou case. Now, I came across this when Economou, he comes from a very wealthy Greek family involved in shipping. Keep low profile. He's everything I'm not. He's younger, quite a bit younger than me. Handsome, intelligent, charismatic, modest. And he met this woman named Eleanor de Freitas, about 12 years younger than him. I could see that we'll be like, he may be looking to marry her or something like that. Very attractive, with breasts to die for, as somebody put it. But she was acting rather weirdly. She spent the weekend with him, and he ran her name through his search engine, probably Google, I suppose, and he realised she was a prostitute, tantric services, and coming from a religious family as well as a wealthy one, not the sort of girl he wanted to take home to be mother. So he cut off all contact with her. She goes to the police and claims he drugged and raped her 2 weeks previously. He's arrested, and the police are doing nothing. He's bailed pending further inquiries. So he does his own, being a man of means, he does his own research, and among other things, he finds out that well, at some point he found out he wasn't the first man she'd accused. She'd accused, I think it was her landlord, of attempted rape, and she made allegations against her parents, but she was a total nutter. Anyway, he dug out CCTV evidence of her and him shopping for sex toys, and he presented this to the police and dropped the case. Well, he wasn't satisfied with that. He wanted to prosecute it, so he brought a private prosecution. The CPS agreed to go ahead with it, and 3 days before it was due to come to court, she hanged herself. He expressed his sympathy with the family. I'm not sure I would have done, a woman who tried to destroy my life like that. And again, I'll put a link below. The trials of Alexander Economou. There was that trial which never happened, and there was a trial for defamation. Well, he was charged with harassment. He was charged with harassing Harriet Wistrick. It's insane. And he was acquitted of that, and he brought a libel action against the father of Eleanor de Freitas. He asked for £1 damages, and he lost. Well, it clears out. Well, as far as I'm concerned, his name was cleared. But how I got involved, as it were, was I was watching. It wasn't a live program. It was a recording on I didn't have a TV then. No, I didn't have a TV then. I've done TV for years, but it was on YouTube. It was a recording, and it was Lisa Longstaff of Women Against Rape. She was on the Victoria Derbyshire programme, and she was talking about this case, and she said Eleanor de Freitas was sued by her rapist. She said that twice. I contacted. I'm actually I think I got a phone number for Economou. He phoned me back. I spoke to him at length anyway. I think it's the only time I spoke to him. We corresponded by email, and he got a retraction from the BBC. You'll find it on the timeline. I'll put a link to that as well. But actually, Victoria Derbyshire is a woman who is a real. She had cancer, breast cancer, and I think she had a very partial mastectomy, and she broadcast that. This is a real woman, not. Anyway, on the page relating to false accused defactors, there's an archived video of her with one of her clients. Really disgusting stuff. I wouldn't put the actual video on my site or on my hard disk. Well, it was on my hard disk temporarily, but anyway, this is a guy who helped himself. Now, he had the means to do it, being wealthy. Well, he didn't need that much wealth actually, but he probably need some wealth to bring the prosecution. But there were lots of men falsely accused who don't help themselves. And there are ways of doing this, which brings me to David Lee Travis and then Rolf Harris. You'll find this on the timeline, Operation Yewtree, and Rolf has his own page. David Lee Travis was the way this insane Operation Yewtree treated him was absolutely outrageous. Eventually, he was convicted of one trivial indecent assault on a woman 20 or 30 years earlier, and he received a suspended sentence for that. He ended up losing everything. He had to sell his house, but he hired William Merritt of Merritt International to research the allegations against him. And after the case, he stood outside Southwark Crown Court, thanked his legal team and thanked Merritt. I heard that, and I wrote to Rolf Harris in prison. I said, look, you have to hire this guy, and he did. And these imbeciles who run the Crown Prosecution Service and the police decided they wanted to keep Rolf in prison until he died. They actually succeeded with Max Clifford. But Merritt did sterling work on further false allegations, also on the original cases. Well, there were 4 accusers. There was the woman the main so-called victim. She was actually his mistress. There was a woman who claimed to have been groped at a sports event, a charity event. There was Tonya Lee, who was just a simple liar. And there was Wendy Wendy Rocha, who's now deceased. And that was absolutely ridiculous. There was no evidence, no credible evidence of Rolf had even been to this community centre where he was meant to have groped her when she was 6 or 7 or 8 years old. But they went ahead with it anyway. He had terrible legal representation at the first trial, but at the appeal, he brought an appeal and he dropped it. But when Merritt came on, after he hired Merritt, he resumed the appeal. The Wild conviction was quashed, even though the Crown contested it. Even though they must have known it was complete garbage. There's no paper trail, no nothing. There would have been something. I'll explain why elsewhere. So Rolf was in a position to help himself. It cost him a lot of money, but it was worth it. And he died a free man, thanks partly to me, but largely to William Merritt. I've heard from him recently. He actually donated to my Buy Me a Coffee page. Hint, hint, hint. So let's look at a couple of people who could have helped themselves but didn't. starting with a dude I will not name. He may be out of prison now, I hope so. And this was absolutely ridiculous. I read about his case sometime after his conviction, and he was over 50 when he was accused of raping an underage girl from the age of 14. Well, it didn't take much effort to work out who that girl was. I wrote to him in prison, and he wrote back, and eventually I heard from his 86-year-old mother, and I'm sure there would have been, I won't go into too much detail, but due to the logistics, it would have been possible for to debunk the claims. These women, you know, that I've discussed this elsewhere, but start with the entry for Sigmund Freud. Again, I'll put a link to the timeline. Start with the entry for Sigmund Freud and look at We Believe the Children, the video. A lot of these historical allegations come from women who've confabulated due to alcohol, drugs, recreational drugs, prescription drugs, or maybe it's a bit divvy. But they often make compelling witnesses because they're not telling lies in a conventional sense. Anyway, I contacted this guy, and eventually it fizzled out. His mother never contacted. She might be dead by now. And it's all very sad. His wife divorced him. His house was sold, and he was hit for. He had to pay towards legal aid. So when he comes out of prison, he'll be broke, and it's been destroyed by lies, or more likely fantasies. We really do need statutes of limitations to stop these obscene miscarriages of justice. The other person I'll mention is Marie Black, who has been painted as, well, a monster basically. You'll see a photograph of her, a photograph making her look evil or sinister. And I wrote to her, I made a short documentary about her. She wasn't too happy about that, but I'm the only one she's got in the corner. There was an expert witness on memory. Well, I don't think it wasn't as much memory as child abuse allegations. I corresponded with him, and he said his evidence was rejected. I heard from her, I think it was her boyfriend. She was married to some guy, and she was, in my humble opinion, she was an abused woman, and she's been portrayed as an abuser. There's a photograph of her with she went to France, and she's a mother of 5. She had 4 kids who were taken away from her, and she was in France with a baby, and it's just, what they've done to her, I think, is outrageous. I also heard from her father, who phoned me, and I think this is a terrible miscarriage of justice. But again, I wrote to her a while back, I think last year. I said, look, you know, if you don't want to write, if you don't want to do anything about your case, then that's down to you. Not very comfortable there, sorry. And she hasn't helped herself, and she's, well, she'll probably be in prison. Let me put it this way, I think I'll have departed this earth by the time she's released from prison. I hope not, but probably. and it's very sad, and it feels this does happen to women as well. This is another case on the timeline. This is David Bryant, who was, it wasn't him who helped himself, it was his wife who did. He was a firefighter, and on December 20th, 2013, by which time he was retired, he was convicted at Bournemouth Crown Court of an act of homosexual rape. Between 1976 and 1978. They really do amaze me, these CPS lawyers and the police, that they would entertain anything like this. Anyway, he was given a jail sentence, and his wife did some research on the case, quite a lot of research actually. He was cleared on appeal in July 2016, thanks to his wife, who died in February 2017, aged just 54. And it shows that, well, sometimes the police, sometimes they don't do any proper investigation at all. This is something that cuts both ways. I don't entirely disagree with Avalos about certain things, but I would say it works both ways. It works for men who've been falsely accused, as well as women who've been, let's say women who've been let down, not necessarily being prosecuted for false allegations, but maybe they don't find the guy or do a proper investigation to bring a perpetrator to justice. And this transcends all sorts of sexual offences. There's a big scandal a while back of post office clerks who were falsely accused, dozens of, if not hundreds of them. It was a massive miscarriage of justice. But postmasters, but people who run post offices, and you get all sorts of ludicrous. They mangle statistics, and they don't bother looking for exculpatory evidence, or they don't bother looking for evidence at all. One would like to think that murder cases are an exception, but we've seen so many cases involving men who've been falsely convicted of murder, and women who've been falsely convicted of murder, where maybe there wasn't a murder, or maybe somebody else did it. So it really is, it's terribly sad. But if you've had any experience of the police, the criminal justice system, you realise what utter scumbags most of these people are. Not all of them, there's exceptions. There's Jerry Hayes, for example, who was the prosecutor in the Liam Allen case. Again, I'll put a link to that. He asked for, well, he led to Allen being acquitted. Well, he never went to the jury. But a lot of these prosecutors and police are just dishonest. And you have the people who, anyone who's got any sort of criminal conviction is regarded as fair game. The idea is, well, this guy must be guilty because he's done this or done something before. And it's very sad that people's lives are destroyed like this. Incidentally, there was a judge named David Bryant, August 4th, 1999. He called for a register of false rape accusers. It's partly the reason I set up this timeline. There's another far more personal reason, but yeah. I should point out that this is although the false rape timeline is the most comprehensive database of false rape allegations anywhere in the world. It isn't the first by any means. There have been other websites. There was one called Register Her, which I think is long gone, and there's a community of the falsely accused. But I mean, there's nothing like this elsewhere, anywhere else. The scale of this is quite enormous, if I say so myself. But I've been working on it for over 7 years. And I'll finish up with, this is a case of a taxi driver. November 16, 2014, again it's on the timeline. Maxime Fuenhedo picks up a drunken female passenger who claims he took her back to his apartment, raped her, and took her home. His story was that she came on to him. He had a gut feeling something bad was going to happen, so tapped their conversation. Yeah, there've actually been a few cases like this of taxi drivers who've been falsely accused. Some of them have got the please excuse me. It's it isn't just the heat, believe me. Been quite a few cases like that of taxi drivers who've not just from sexual cases, but you know, there's something to be said for this, not total surveillance, but having cameras all over the place. There was something to be said for it, especially when you can take people yourself. So I think I'll leave it there. Not an awful lot. There are other cases in this database of people who've helped themselves. A lot of it is really getting proper legal representation, unlike what Rolf Harris did initially. And this can be expensive, but you need if you're going to be, if you think you're going to be falsely accused of something. If some crazy bitch says, I'm going to tell the police you raped me, something like that, you need to preserve evidence. You need to, there's all sorts of things you can do now. And another way people help themselves is by keeping their mouth shut in a police station. I mean, in Canada it's slightly different. Legal representation is different. Canada is a terrible place to be falsely accused of anything sexual. But to keep your counsel and basically allow the false accuser to make her allegations, so you know exactly where you stand. But a really good idea is to stay away from crazy women. I mean, and drunk women, women who do drugs, women who have tattoos, women, there are all sorts of red flags for women. You know, they don't always look deranged. This is where it's difficult, because there's a lot of cases in this database of women most men would take home to meet mother, and they turn out to be crazy bitches or just vindictive. So, I mean, that is basically it. God helps those who help themselves. That applies to women as well, in not necessarily in a sexual context. Basically, just be alert, you know. Don't just stay away from drunk women. just do that. You'll help yourself if you stay away from drunk women. So I'll edit this and upload it, and maybe I'll do a live one. I've got something slightly different planned, but for the near future. But we'll see how things turn out.